District Board meeting. I'm Edie Granning, I'm the board chair, and I'm going to run us through the agenda and see if we need to make any modifications to that, and then we will get started. So we start with community comments. Then we have a district priorities progress update. After that, we have, sorry, just lost my place. After that, we have the continuous improvement plan that needs to be approved by the board. We'll have a presentation on that first. We will have an update on the superintendent search. The HR committee has been hard at work. We will appoint a VSBA voting delegate and look at the resolutions. After that, the superintendent report will be presented. We have minutes to approve. We have committee reports after that. And then if there's other business, that will be following that. Any adjustments, modifications, changes to the agenda? And remote folks can hear us just fine. Just checking in, I probably need to do that. Great. Pat, could you do a roll call for us, please? And I know that Susan and Ethan are not going to be able to attend tonight.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Tara Arneson.
Present.
Kevin Campbell.
Can you say it loud? So he's going to make it louder. Sure. Thank you.
Heather Chadwick.
Here.
Alison Conant.
Here.
Gail Conley. Here. Stephen Diglio.
Here.
John Firstel.
Here.
Edie Granning.
I am here.
James Granzow.
Here.
Susan Lillich.
She will not be here tonight.
Okay. Sandra Limoges. Ethan Maurer.
Will not be here tonight.
Stuart Morajo. Katie Nelson.
Here.
Lisa Pollitt.
Present.
And student rep Abby O'Malley. Not yet. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Just making some notes for other business. Sorry, y'all, I have a list. Community comments. Do we have any community comments? I don't see anybody in the room or online. Okay, if folks show up, we can come back to that if the board is okay with that. Are we ready then to move on to the district priorities progress update? Yeah, great. Andrew, are you taking us through that?
I'm going to start.
Okay, great.
And then about halfway through, Andrew is going to talk about some next steps, but wanted to give you an update on our priorities and some data and some steps that we've taken to try to meet what's in our ends. We took a pretty significant chunk of our admin retreat going over these, a little bit different presentation, but a lot of the information is similar. And also collecting some feedback from administrators on these. And we spent quite a bit of time on that as well and looking for some themes. And the theme that came out of our the portion where we all met was that we need to keep focused on these priorities and that we might be able to combine some together, but that we probably shouldn't really shift the gears too quickly into something new right off. So that was the major overall theme that came out of that. Can you go on to the next slide? So these are our priorities. You've seen these over and over and over and over again. They are everywhere in the district, and we've talked about them quite a bit in relationship to some of the monitoring reports and other details that we've shared with you over the last year or so. And here's I like this visual. did a little editing to it, but I give Andrew credit for it. But essentially, it's taking our priorities and showing where we want to get to, which is equity, inclusion for all students, and graduating effective, engaged citizens. And we talked a lot about that at our last meeting with the ENDS policy. Now I'll go into some of the progress updates for you. Starting with social and emotional learning and mental health, we have some baseline data that we've gotten through the pilot that we did last year, or the beginning survey for students in our schools. So we have some baseline data that we're going to be able to compare with this year. And we really focused on belonging. And I won't go through the numbers, but you can see we've been using our survey tool to survey students to get a sense of where they're at and how they're feeling. And these are some of the results that we had. Our YRBS, which is the Youth Behavior Risk Survey, also has information and questions that they ask that align with our local Panorama data. Now, Panorama is the database that we're using for this, as well as to track student progress and to help us with interventions. So we have some pretty good baseline data that we can use. And then I also added in here, now take into account that the Youth Behavior Risk Survey is like 2 or sometimes 3 years behind. That's the way it rolls out. There's nothing we can do about it. So, you know, I think the data you're looking at right now is 21, 22. So that's a few years ago. But that's the most recent data that they have published. We'll get a newer version this year. Shows that our attendance rate is very high. So really good news. Students are coming to school. And this is, they compare this to the state and also the county. And our truancy rates are very low comparatively. So we don't have a lot of students that are truant or missing big chunks of school for unexcused absences, which, you know, our rate is less than 1% and the state is about 20%. So that's pretty good.
You want questions as we go, or?
Sure.
So is there a way that we can look like year over year or past ones? Because, you know, it says 72% between 3 and 5, grades 3 and 5 are favorable. We know what that's increased over the last break.
This last year was our first year we gave it. So moving forward, we're going to have some comparative data that we'll be able to use. So that's a good thing. So we'll be able to compare that cohort of students, how they're feeling compared to last year. So we hadn't done anything like this really district-wide for some of our younger students. We have been doing some of this in the high school through the Youth Behavior Risk Survey and with some middle school students, but nothing on our own.
A question about that, John. In addition to the survey, which was done just last year, do you have other data points from the past that would give you information about how students are feeling when it comes to a sense of belonging?
We do with the Youth Behavior Risk Survey, but not really with our own instrument. So this is really one of the first times that we've done some of this and collected it for younger students. We did years and years ago, but it wouldn't be relevant today. So we're hoping we're going to be able to use this and build on it over time, which we are going to give it again this year. And this is one of the key steps that we wanted to implement, and we were able to do it, you know, relatively successfully.
Before you go on,
Yeah.
So I think John alluded to it, but didn't say it very specifically. We bought this screener, with some of the money we got from COVID, right? With the ESSER money. That was the plan originally.
We did some, but now we we need to keep it going.
Yep, it's because that was more of a one-time cost rather than more staff, and it was a way for us to get a broader look across, right? That was
Yep.
one of the,
Yep.
so just wanted to kind of bring that piece in, because we did talk about how do we use our money more for one-time things than for ongoing things, so.
And I'll get into a little bit more, the resources that we're in PD that we were able to do that will build over time.
But Steve, before I come to you, can you just talk for a second about how this works? Like, is this all computer based, or, you know, the screening?
Yes, yep,
Yeah.
it's electronic.
It's fully electronic.
Yep.
And it's once a year, it's
We
quarterly, it's
give
monthly,
it
it's
twice a year, right? The STAR,
three
Andrew?
times a year?
3 times.
So we're talking about the Panorama SEL survey. I think we gave that out just once last year to compare against YRBS. We're giving it out 3 times this year.
And the plan is to do 3 times a year ongoing, or we're going to make that call
that's
after
correct.
we get.
Yeah, we'll aim for 3 times a year, just so we have kind of something in the fall. So we'll be doing this in probably mid to late October, and then again probably in February, and then again towards the end of the year.
Thank you. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. One that just came to mind as Andrew was talking is, does the board get to see these survey results and like in its entirety? Because, we see bits and pieces in various presentations, but it'd be good to do we get to see the whole picture?
You can see anything that you want.
Okay.
Or try to integrate it into where it makes sense.
So would we have to request that information, or is there portals, or just out of curiosity? I mean, I bet there's a lot that you're asking.
There's not really a portal, but we can, we can summarize it.
Yeah, I think we would have to put it on the agenda for the board to have a presentation, something more in-depth, social, emotional, mental health, and we can talk about what that looks like.
I tried to connect it with this priority.
And there's a focus on belonging, which to me means can mean a lot of different things. Like, is there a definition that's provided to the kids when they talk about belonging?
There's a lot of we've been doing it in like guidance and morning meetings and advisory is belonging. Like people feeling welcomed in the school, feeling like they're part of the school community, that their unique strengths are appreciated, and their own characteristics. So it's really like feeling safe in the building, feeling like an adult cares about you, and that that the people around you are generally pretty accepting.
Okay.
And that's been a theme that we really have tried to work on. Is just throwing out the word belonging, means something really different to probably a lot of different people. So we definitely have done some education around it, some front loading, really on a daily basis.
Thomas, your question?
Well, I was just looking at this CDC site for youth risk behavior survey. How is this sort of national database, of which Vermont is included in it? Is this the same survey that we use?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then we usually meet with the health. We did meet with the health department. One of the issues is the data lags. It really does.
Yeah, the latest is 2021 results.
So, and you can't get them any sooner because of the way the process works. But it's good data, and we dive into it and use it. And then the Vermont Health Department came in and met with, 30 of us, and just talked about, okay, here's how you compare to the state and the county, and a little bit of national data too. And then talks about things that you're doing, they feel like you're doing really well, and things that you want to be paying attention to. And none of these are perfect. So there's always work that needs to be done. But and Andrew was there, so he can, and Rebecca Tebow, and comparatively, we're not perfect, but we do really well compared to the county and the state. But things like drinking, drug use, and some other areas of risky behavior, if you will, that students go through. But we want 100%. So there's plenty of work to do.
I just wanted to add that the results of the survey that came out before this information is sort of where the All Together Now project came from, and working with United Way. So I know that you've all sort of heard of that, and they work with every town in our district trying to provide healthy alternatives for students and really focus on mental health. So I think, you know, that information does get to the community, and they do impactful things with the information from these surveys.
Yep, it's been really useful. I just signed the MOU.
Survey every time?
I don't think,
Risk behavior
no, they
survey?
make some changes.
Okay, but I say, if we're just blowing through this thing, the same one 3 times a year, they're not taking.
No. It's pretty, it is pretty intentional.
So the youth risk behavior survey is run by the health department, and that is statewide and nationwide.
Right, but the one we're
The one
providing-
we're providing.
Yeah.
That's
It's not the same survey. We're giving them 3 times in a year, because if it's the same one, I can tell you, I would have blown off the second 2. It's the same one you gave me earlier. There's no, if
Yeah.
it's not asking different questions, you have to read it, then I'm afraid that some of the information might be skewed, with kids just saying this is what they want to hear.
Yep. So we have a great tool that we're using. We're collecting some good baseline data. And then we're using it to talk about, you know, what do we need to do in our schools to support students' mental health. Then I gave some other, part of our goal is also staff's mental health.
Do you use the same tool with staff?
We have not, but that's something that we have thought about doing. You have to be really, really careful with surveys, because you can just get very unusable, not great data. So it's like an art form to do it well, and not get just, you know, you want critical feedback, but that's all you get, then it's not useful. So you really got to try to structure the questions, and there's a lot of people that are working on this. One of the things that Panorama does is it gives you some questions that they have tested over time. So yes, we're talking about something we might do with staff. And then we have a staff wellness. I won't read through these, but we really cultivated a pretty strong wellness program in all of our schools. We had a gold, or excellent, the highest you can get from the governor and from Dr. Levine. Sent me a letter. And there's things that you need to do and information that they gather to put you on that list. And then there's others that I won't read this to you because you can read, and I don't like it when people read slides to me. But we've expanded our alternative programming across the board on all grade levels, and we have because we've started hiring our own. I tried not to use a bunch of acronyms and let you can actually Google these and you can find out what they do, but behavioral interventionists and board certified behavioral analysts who support the BIs in collecting good data and making changes in a really thoughtful and therapeutic way. And then really trying to create the culture through a lot of different ways of students feeling good about themselves and good about the school and good about the community. And some critical parts are co-curricular is really, really important to students. That's one thing I have learned over the last few years is it keeps many students really connected to school. It could be a club, it could be anything, but it really is super meaningful And something that if we're really serious about this, we have got to keep, or we definitely are going to see worse results on our own samples of data and from the youth behavior risk survey. Okay, again, I'm not going to read it through all of these, but you know, our ABAR council has done a lot of work to provide some structure and guidance to school-based ABAR committees so that they can be working with their staff on all sorts of diversity and inclusion topics. I didn't write down all of those, but I can certainly get you a list if you want to. I see the information consistently, and a lot of that comes from our district committee and filters down to the school-based committee, which has been really successful. So in keeping the work going and helping us to not take our eye off the ball, if you will. And then our coaches are in schools on a daily basis, helping small groups and teachers differentiate lessons and provide some support and guidance to staff because questions do come up. And we put a lot of effort into professional development of new people and support staff and making sure that we have a certain level of baseline training for everybody. And we have achieved that. And then as we're revising our units, really leaning in on our coaches and other folks to make sure that we're doing it through an equity lens and a diversity lens. We talked about this at the last meeting, but that's going to be more important than ever as we try to implement the educational quality standards. There's some, pretty significant changes that we talked about last week. And then really at the school level, having developmentally appropriate conversations with students about topics that come up around equity and diversity and inclusion. And we've been just talked about that at our district committee and at the school-based committees probably the most, and then really using our coaches to help us do that and do it well. So we think about the ends. All the things that we're doing are to get us to meet our ends and to meet them and be making progress towards meeting those ends. Early literacy. So we've done a lot of work on this, which I know you know, and there's some, I would say, some pretty good results and that we've seen. So the Vermont Comprehensive Assessment Program, that is the state assessment that we give to students in grades 3 through 8 and grade 9. The reading, math, and then science, I think, is in 5th grade and 8th grade. And so we were able to, and it's a new assessment, relatively new, so we don't have a lot of comparative data, but we will. They don't change it. So, last year our 3rd graders were 55% proficient, and this year they were 66. That's really good, statistically significant. So we're making progress for sure, and we've seen it really probably at every level. And I guess the one thing that was really encouraging, STAR, the first year that we implemented it with everybody was last year. So we have baseline data that we'll use and we will be able to track over time. Something that was encouraging in the data that we saw was that the STAR scores were aligned pretty well with the Vermont VCAT results. I mean, really close. And we saw that pretty consistently in other grade levels. Again, this is a sample for you to take a look at. And we also gave it to our kindergartners, at the end of the year where we want them to be, and 89% were proficient or above on the STAR. And most of that is really phonemic based, being proficient in it, and being able to demonstrate that you understand it. So those results are good and better than when we piloted it, which I think was around 70. So that's, again, that's pretty good. The work that we're doing that you, and again, I won't read this to you. We've invested a lot of money in professional development. We've invested a lot of money, a lot of it from ESSER. So it's one-time money to get these resources, some of the PD, and then it will show dividends down the road, is paying off. Now we have a goal, 90% third graders being proficient, and you know we're gonna be assessing them this fall and seeing where they're at, and you know the indications are that they're getting better all the time. And some of the interventions that we've really implemented as well, tier 3, which you know you'll see a little bit later, that's really evidence-based, structured in reading interventions that are given for a period of time, usually 10+ weeks.
Yep, go ahead, Steve.
So can you go in a little more about, what we're doing with the kids who aren't proficient at the moment? When I see 66, 67, those numbers concern me. I understand they're improving, but that's still, kind of low. And I know we have a goal of 90 that we're trying to achieve, but that's, we have a, 24% to gap to get there. And still the kids, and I'm assuming a lot of this may have to do with the COVID lag and things of that nature, but what goes on when you find out a kid that's not proficient? Like, how does that work? How do we make sure they don't slip through the cracks, things of that nature? Just so I know.
It's in the next slide.
Okay, thank you.
The multi-tiered systems of support, which we talked about. So I'll
And can we back up also and talk about when we changed the curriculum to be phonemic based?
the science of reading.
Which we did when?
2 years ago is when we really started diving into it.
Yeah.
Yep. And now,
So some of this, Steve, is as much about COVID as it is about the way we were teaching. And so we're really going back and doing a lot of remediation.
And I think it's important to say that even though those numbers appear low, nationally, sadly, they're average. And so that's sort of one of the things that prompted the need to take a look at how reading was being taught in schools.
And just so you know, like it's a 4, there's not meeting and approaching. We have a lot of students that are 2 that are on the cusp of a 3. And that Andrew and I actually talked about that, before the meeting, was that we have a lot of students that with a little bit of support, tier 2, then there'll be 3s. But these have really improved. And a lot of it has to do with the way we were teaching reading and what we thought was best practices, honestly and authentically, and a change to really trying to have a very balanced literacy program, and starting with the fundamentals of phonemic awareness and phonemic proficiency.
John, I was curious in reading some of this data, if the district has worked with the Stern Center for Language and Learning. They have remarkable professional development that I have gone through. Lead to Read is what it's called. Has the district worked at all with Stern Center?
Yep, yeah, we have for years, and they have trained many of our. We have like quadruple the people, maybe more than that, who have been trained in Norton Gillingham, and they have helped us to be able to do that. So we try to access their PD whenever we can, and consult with them as well.
The nice thing about the Lead to Read is that it's for all of the educators, not just, a specific few.
Mm-hmm.
So schools, everyone in the school will go through it. That's an educator. So something to think about.
But thank you. They have been very, very useful resource for us for, 2+ decades I've been here. Okay, so getting to the next part, the multi-tiered systems of support. So this is where we talk about the educational support team. And if we see a student that is not on grade level or not where we want them to be, then we get a team of people together and we talk about how they're doing, take a look at their results, analyze the data, and say, you know, what do we need to do differently in core instruction, which is tier 1 and tier 2? What are some strategies and some resources that we can use? And then we try those. If students, you know, aren't making the progress that we want, then that team, you know, comes together anyway, because we're looking at this over time. And they talk about, does this student need a tier 3 intervention? And what would that look like? And how long would they need it? And when are we going to get back together? So that's something all of our schools have. And it's some of the work that we've done around these guiding coalitions. So what are the collective commitments around that? And really making sure that the time to do it is built into schedules, and that it's a routine, and that we really keep that sacred. So the people have the time to do it. And we're working with our interventionists to select what are the best research evidence-based tier 3 interventions out there, getting the training and implementing them. And so that's how we're trying to catch students, you know, up. A lot of students, tier 1 and 2, you know, is what they need. But there, some students need something a little bit more intense, depending on what is happening with them. And we have these data teams that we have really been working hard on to get the routines down, to get the agendas and sort of the framework very common, and making sure it's systematic at all the schools. And then, you know, obviously it's important too to be reporting to parents and having them be part of the team. So that's how we try to, you know, make sure. No, the big part of multi-tiered systems of support is to have it so no student falls through the cracks. So,
Yep, go ahead.
So is this kind of what you mean by equitable, or, you know, is where you see somebody lagging, you give them more tiers of resources,
you give them what they need.
and to try to catch up,
yep,
to be proficient, or
Yep,
whatever. And that's tracked.
exactly.
So, okay.
Yes, that exactly, Steve. We're getting better and better at this all the time.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, so John, on the resources that we have for this, how many FTEs would you estimate are supporting MTSS, like indirectly, not directly providing education to the student, but providing the system
intervention?
A lot of times you see data that's like teachers per student or student per teachers, whatever. And to the staff that we have kind of supporting this from underneath, are they also teachers, or are they just dedicated?
They're teachers. They're licensed teachers. When you're thinking of intervention, I'm going to talk about specifically interventionists. These are people that are highly trained to support students at the tier 3 level. And we also have, you know, special educators who also offer tier 3 interventions.
And just walk through tier 1 is classroom.
Tier 1 and 2 are both classroom. And then tier 3 is generally the interventionist. It doesn't always have to be, depends on the student.
So it's self-facilitated, like the teachers are getting together as ESTs, educational support teams, and discussing individual students, what their structure should look like, then they're executing.
Yes, yep, depending on what.
You had a coaching consultant, but they came in, established the framework, did the training. Now it's pilot, so to speak. But do you have anybody who's overseeing, you know, how it's going, new teachers joining?
The principal.
There's kind of three levels: principal, the assistant superintendent, special ed director. That's the kind of the team that's really monitoring it.
I wondered if your question was how many staff district wide are in their role or in part in their role to support this system of supports. Like I wondered, was that your question or was your question
Actually,
how many
I didn't
people
ask it
aren't?
probably the right way based on the answer, but it sounded like how it was being described is that we had a team of people who were facilitating this. I didn't realize it was teachers themselves.
Yeah, no, it's grade level teams of teachers that get together with the interventionist, special educator, sometimes one of our coaches, and they take a look at how students are doing and they develop a plan for them and they track it.
And so just to reiterate, this is all prior to a special education evaluation.
Yep. Trying to solve the problem so students can be successful. Sometimes there's a student has a disability and they need to go on, they need an IEP, and this is trying to do everything that we can to fix it early and ongoing. So the team is our teacher. I mean, does that make sense? Yep. And then the whole PLC structure really is integrated into the multi-tiered systems of support. When we talked to our administrator, they really felt that this kind of folds into the multi-tiered systems of support because this is the structure for those teams to work effectively. We have done a really good job of, again, building the routines, having the templates, having people use the same framework. Yes.
This seems really time consuming. We know how much time this takes on the part of the teachers when they get together with these teams. Outside of actually educating everybody else. I just feel like it's just in a good way, but for me, my mind's like, oh my God, teachers will suffer like that. And it's state mandated.
Yeah, it's a law as well,
Yeah.
so we have to do it, but it's at least once a week that they do this for students, and over time you get better at it, is what I have observed, because we've been doing PLCs for a while, and some people move away from it if you don't really focus on it. And I think multi-tiered system of supports, the whole framework kind of brought us back to, okay, we have to build these really good systems. We have to have these data, build off the work that we did in the professional development we did with data teams, and then just make it sacred. We're doing this, and we're going to get really good at it. And, people have embraced it, but it takes time and it takes focus. And, it's like policies. They're only as good as how you implement them, right? Or if they even are implemented. So we need to stay really focused on this. But schools have developed or revised their vision statements around this work, their mission, their collective commitments. And so that's some work that we needed to get done. And we have been able to achieve that, over the last 2 years. So we're happy about that. Something we can't push to the side. It has to be ongoing and can't be static. I added in the NEAS report some indicators that are related to this, and that the evaluation really felt that Mount Mansfield Union High School was strong in a number of areas, but certainly in the 3 that I mentioned here. Oh, sorry, we were behind. I'm on the last one, which is something that we've talked about. And humbly, I would say this is a strength of ours that's been developed over 2 decades, where we have these curriculum committees that we don't just let things stay the same. We look at them, we revise them based on what the needs of students are, what's going on in the world. What the laws are, what the ed quality standards are, what our ends are. And this is ongoing all the time. and it'll never stop. And so it's something you can't ever take your eye off, because you want to have really good vertical alignment. And one thing that, you know, we really got better at last year was like the middle school, high school, but we want to just make that as consistent as we can be. You know, because that's some feedback that we've got from families that for some students the transition has been harder. So we're just trying to make sure we're all on the same page. And that's something we're going to continue to need to work on.
Eric,
Yes.
who is doing the refining?
Teachers.
Teachers or
Coaches.
are like the one, say, all the elementaries are refining together, or inter-elementary?
We have curriculum committees that are at different grade level, you know, developmental and school level, like pre-K to 4, 5, 8, 9, 12. And so they refine the curriculum, and then they bring it back to staff, get feedback. You know, we look at, again, what are the ed quality standards, and what are our ends, what are we trying to do. The Common Core drove some of this work, so it really, a lot of it has to do with some national and state standards as well. So we have to follow those.
The assistant superintendent is the
Coordinates that.
coordinator. That's
There we
the
go.
missing link.
Okay, and the coaches help with, you know, some of that coordination as well. Okay, next steps. This is Andrew. Andrew, you ready?
I am. Good evening, everyone. All right, so what I'm going to talk about now is I'm going to go through each of these priorities and just kind of discuss what we're really focused on for this upcoming year and future years as well. So related to social emotional learning and mental health, two of the big things that we've focused on both this August and we'll be looking at through the remainder of this year is what's called responsive classroom training. And this is a nationally known organization that provides a wide variety of workshops, mostly at the elementary level, but also at middle school level. And many of our schools and educators had taken some of these trainings before, but it's been 5+ years since anyone has done this. And so we utilize some of our remaining ESSER 3 funds to provide a wide range of workshops for folks during the August in-service. And so what we try to do is differentiate it so that it wasn't just like, here's everyone's going to take this singular workshop, but we had, first off, we had a North and a South version to help accommodate folks in different areas of our district. We had an introductory version for those who are new to responsive classroom at each end of the district. We also had a kind of advanced version for folks who had taken some courses before. And then we also had an option for specialist teachers, so art teachers, PE, librarians, etc., that had a focus on their particular kind of area of education. And then we also provided at both ends of the district training for support staff as well, so paraprofessionals in the classroom, so that we can have a consistent approach to doing this. And then finally, there was a group that included principals, other administrators, and instructional coaches that was focused on sustaining implementation, because that really is the crux of all of this work. You don't want to do a workshop and just do it once and be like, well, hope it works. You really need to make sure that you manage it and kind of steward that work forward. So we've done the initial training for folks. And again, for many, it was not new. The goal now is really to maintain that work. And so we just put out a survey to all the K-4 staff who engaged in these trainings back in August to gather kind of next steps information around what aspects of responsive classroom, which kind of in a nutshell aims to create, welcoming, kind, inclusive classroom environments that are really focused on routines, and what are the resources and what are the strategies that teachers really need help on. One of the central elements of responsive classroom is the development of routines and making sure that you focus on that for the first 6 weeks of school to develop a solid classroom environment, which really is the foundation for making sure that students can be successful academically. At the middle school level, focused on another strategy with a similar name. It's called restorative practices. Again, nothing super new. Many schools across Vermont and the country have been engaged with this for a while. Restorative practices, there's some similarities to responsive classroom, but restorative practices really is focused on, again, creating, safe learning environments for folks, but also emphasizing the importance of relationships and also repairing relationships after harm. So a lot of it has to do with when there's an issue, it's an approach to help ameliorate those issues. And so both Kamloops and Browns River have engaged in some training on that, and they're going to continue to do that over the course of this year. And then John already talked about the SEL survey. So last year was our first year doing that, and we'll continue to expand on using that to gather some baseline data on right now kind of belonging and wellness. And then we already have a curriculum second step that our guidance counselors use, but what we're trying to work on right now is create a kind of grade level scope and sequence that connects with kind of broader standards so that we have a really clear view of these are the things that we're doing each year. Yeah, thank you.
Andrew, I got a question for you. What happens when a student doesn't respond to one of these restorative practices? The way we would like them to respond to it.
Yeah, and it's very likely that a student, may not respond to that approach, and so that is going to be initially dealt with at the school level, and so they will, go that approach first, and then if that's not working, then depending on the grade level and the school and their particular behavioral protocols and all that sort of stuff, they will kind of take it from there, and that it may require a different approach and different strategies.
Can I add context also? If it's hazing, harassment, bullying, we also have state law that we follow, and we have different investigations that have to happen, and we have certain obligations that we have to follow depending on the behavior as well. So there are two different things, right? There's one that is the classroom and the community and repairing harm there. And then the other layer is what are our other obligations. And you always have student safety as primary baseline, right, that we have to maintain. So
yeah, thank you.
It's
Great
multi-layered. Point. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, really good point. Regarding our anti-bias, anti-racism, and equity efforts, John talked a lot about what we've been doing. Kat, who is our K-8 equity coach, one of the big changes this year is she's joining all of our instructional coach meetings. So for instance, today I met with all of our K4 coaches, and then shortly after that, I met with all of our 5-8 coaches. And so she's really being embedded into those groups so that she can support and collaborate with our content area coaches to kind of look at how we really de-silo this work and look at it through each of the different content areas. One of the big things we're working on this year, and we have our first ABAR Council meeting this Thursday, is looking at the implementation of the recently revised educational quality standards. So I understand that there was a presentation a couple of weeks ago where you got some kind of broad information on this. There's a lot in the EQS. The revision of the EQS was really prompted by the Act 1 working group, which was formulated in 2019. And out of that came the revised EQS, in addition to what are called the IRIS Ethnic Studies Framework. And so what our ABAR Council really is going to be looking at is to unpack particularly the elements of the EQS that connect with our ABAR efforts, and to try to operationalize that. So we can look at those different pieces and then say, what does this look like in our classroom? What does this look like at different grade levels so that we can move towards ultimately implementing the educational quality standards as required by law, and to do so in a way that makes sense to educators. So that's going to be the bulk of our work this year in that group. And I've been working closely with both Kat and Rebecca Tebow on how we go about this. And I can tell you, even though we haven't really officially started that work, I have shared this our kind of plan with a couple of different individuals, such as at the VPA, and they've been really impressed with it. And they're actually going to be using some of our work, both with the EQS implementation and IRIS implementation, in some of the work that the VPA is doing in a workshop series they're running this year.
Andrew,
Yeah, go ahead, Sandra.
do we have an equity coach at the high school?
Yes, we do. So Steph Sleeper, there's been some fluctuations, but yes, we had 2 part-times for a while, and my understanding is now we have the main person is Steph Sleeper.
Okay.
And
another
Kat, yeah.
Okay, another question with that, restorative practices, you mentioned K-8. Do restorative practices, are they implemented at the high school as well?
So we've, again, like with all of this work, we try to do it incrementally. And so, yes, they do. And I understand that they've done some of that work in the past. So the particular PD that we've been doing wasn't done at the high school yet. I think, again, they've engaged in some of that in the past. And so that's not to say that it's not happening at the high school. We just have been focused on the middle school level with our most recent professional development activities.
And is there a plan going forward, Andrew, to focus on the high school with restorative practices?
Yeah, I mean, that's something, as John indicated too, that we are trying to get better at every year, is just better alignment between, well, K-12 or pre-K-12, I should say, but also in particular middle school to high school, so that we do have a certain level of consistency in how we approach things, so that, for instance, if a student is familiar with a particular restorative practice in 8th grade, when they go to high school, that they could expect to engage in similar strategies and practices. So it's ongoing work.
Yeah, not to butt in, but I'm going to. They were doing some of this work before the middle schools were. So they've had some trainers come in, had some students trained, and their guidance folks. So they're a little bit out in front of the middle schools on this. And so we're trying to shift a little of the resources more towards the middle school so they can get caught up a bit.
Did I hear another question? Go ahead, Steve.
So is the central purpose of the equity coach to make sure the multi-tiered system is being properly applied to students?
No. So our equity coach is really looking at things from different angles. So, what they've been doing the last few years is really focusing on staff and providing professional learning and professional development. For our staff, so Kat, who I think you all remember, she did a couple of trainings last year with the school board. And so her focus has really been on, again, that kind of foundational capacity building to help frame kind of all this work, because it's very complex and overwhelming, frankly. However, she is starting to do work around curriculum, working with our curriculum and content coaches, and I'm trying to remember, you had your question around MTSS. So she not really no connections with MTSS for the equity coach.
So what exactly is she doing then? I mean, you're saying a lot of things, but I'm not really picking up what exactly a coach does.
Well, the equity coach or an instructional coach?
Well, let's start with the equity coach.
Okay, yeah. So as indicated, this is going to be Kat's 3rd year in the role. And for the last couple of years, her central focus has been on really professional development and training for our educators to, for instance, one of the first pieces of the educational quality standards is to support educators in understanding their biases and their identities. And that's something that she's focused a lot on. And so that's actually, we were just talking about it today, Kat and I, that element of the educational quality standards by no means complete. We've done a significant amount of work in. The other kind of part of the work is understanding the problem itself. And so like, what are the things that we need to focus on? What are the areas where students are maybe not feeling included, or there are inequities in some of our systems and structures? So some of her work has also been in kind of analyzing or auditing, if you will. Can folks still see me?
Yep.
Okay, good, because my thing just like went straight dead. I may have to log back on here in a moment. And so, again, her focus has really been on that capacity building and kind of framing the problem, if you will. And just really quick, our instructional coaches or content coaches, those are really focused on pedagogy and curriculum. And so they're the ones who are helping to lead, the alignment of curriculum, supporting individual teachers and groups of teachers with their instruction. I'm just gonna pop off and pop right back on.
Did your question get answered, Steve? Because I can back up a step and just talk about the fact that we have teachers in our district that graduated from college 20, 30 years ago, right? And so we employ coaches in the district to ensure that all of our staff are up to date on current practice. So we do that for reading, we do that for math, we do that for equity, because these are all things that change and that they're new practices. Other coaches too. Science. So this is, yeah. So that's the bigger balloon for that.
So I guess, what do we mean by equity then? Because I mean, equity, to me, it's, more equitable, like making sure everyone has equal access, I would say, or to the education, but you're not going to have, everybody get the same grades, obviously. And, I'm just kind of having a hard time wrapping my head around exactly what they do that's results in higher proficiencies and things of that nature for our academics.
Well, I would say, sorry to interrupt. I would say one of the things is, and a lot of these things are kind of interwoven together, with the social emotional learning. For instance, if a student doesn't feel like they belong and they're having suicidal thoughts, or, are otherwise their social emotional needs aren't being met, they're not going to be able to learn. And so we need to make sure that we attend to kind of these lower, I don't even call it lower level, but like these different needs. And if those things aren't being attended to, then their availability to learn is not going to be there. And so the academics isn't even going to happen. And so that's where these pieces come in, to make sure we are supporting students so that they are ready to learn, so that they can become proficient and focus on the academics.
And that our programs are representative of a diverse culture. And what we're presenting is not necessarily that it is representative of all the races and cultures that we have that make up the United States and the world, for that matter. It's a big work. And Kat and Stephanie have helped with the school-based teams. Get really intentional about what they need and the trainings that they need, and taking a look at some of the programming and curriculum and making sure that it's inclusive. I mean, if we're going to meet the EQS standards, we're going to need these coaches.
Allison, did you have something you wanted to ask? No.
Nope, just put my camera back on because I.
Great.
Good. Yeah.
Great.
Can I ask for an example and ask if I'm on target? I'm kind of following up with Steve too, because I'm a practical minded person. I'd like to see it. I can see what this looks like in practice. And so if you have students in the classroom and you have one set of instructions for a problem that you want everybody to do, and you hand out that one set of instructions, there's 4 things, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you hand them out to everybody, that's equality. They each have a single set of instructions. Good luck with your assignment, right? What I understand is equity is that when Tommy raises his hand and says, I've got the instructions and I don't know what to do now. And the teacher spends a little time with me and says, well, let's start with number 1, right? And then somebody else raises their hand. They're not having a problem with number 1. They're having a problem with number 4. Or, you know, somebody else is distracted and needs to go to the bathroom. Equity is about providing different sets of responses to each student based on where they're at, with either their abilities or what's going on with them, meeting them kind of where they're at. Am I way off the target?
For the equity coaches,
Yeah.
you know, some of that work, yes, they're doing, and our instructional coaches too. I mean, we talked about universal design for learning. That's what we're trying to get to as well.
And I'll just,
sorry. Oh, okay, I'll try. Also, I think if like one of the questions, most of the people in the room understood it because they were a certain type of person. But someone else in the room just didn't get it because it didn't fit with their background. The integrity coaches try to identify that and fix that question.
Okay. Thank you.
So my understanding, Kat's role is more of a counselor to the teachers to make sure they're all on the same page.
yes. So thank you. That's a good segue, because that's kind of what I was going to say is, well, first off, you know, coaches in general they're not really new. They've been around in schools since probably like the mid 2000s, and they've gained traction over the last several years. And so the role really is, as I didn't see who said that, but as was indicated, they're really meant to work with individual teachers and groups of teachers to support them in kind of their work with incorporating efforts to be more inclusive, you know, equitable, et cetera, in their own classroom. So I'm trying to make sure, like, looking at their curriculum and like, is your curriculum, is it really representative of a wide range of individuals, or is it, you know, not so much? And so coaches are focused on professional development, because what research has borne out over the last decade or so is that just sending folks off to, you know, conferences, or workshops and things like that, though is valuable because you bring back new information, that's not the best way of building internal capacity. The best way to build internal capacity is through job embedded ongoing professional development. And the way that you do that is with coaches who work in your school district, understand the district, built those relationships with the teachers, and then can go and be in the classroom with those teachers, or provide small group or large group you know, professional development. And so that's really, and we've had a strong coaching structure in this district for some time now, probably at least for, I would say, 10 years. And so we continue to build on that model, which we've seen to be successful, and also is, you know, across the country is being seen as the most efficient and most powerful way of supporting teachers through professional development, as opposed to say, like, let's send these 10 teachers to this conference, they'll come back and maybe they'll do something with it. With someone like Kat, who is on site and is in schools and in classrooms, we can provide that ongoing job embedded professional development.
Question?
So should Kat work herself out of a job then after she gets all the teachers on board?
If EQS number changes.
I mean, like, once we get to, like, you know, teacher A in the high school gets her curriculum nailed down, we teach the same aligned curriculum, right? So wouldn't she work herself out of a job?
I don't think so. I don't think anyone could do that, because frankly, we're always continuously improving. I don't think there's ever a time when we're totally done with the work. We're learning new things all the time around what can do better. We have different sorts of students, you know, student challenges, as Edie just indicated. There's policy changes, and so I don't foresee that happening.
But at some point, this will hopefully not be one of our top 6 priorities. We will have brought it to a point where you feel it's more just in maintenance mode, and we're doing what's to keep up. We're talking about it today because John has identified as one of our 6 priorities, which we've been working on for the last 4 years or so.
Right, and so I think that's a good point.
What I might say differently is, if the resources we have working on this right now correctly, it won't be a priority for us, but that doesn't mean it's not important.
Right. Yeah, it's not a $80,000 position here or whatever it is.
Well, however, whatever resources are needed, but it wouldn't be something that a board would need to be talking about in this forum, because we would have succeeded in getting into a point where it's acceptable. Hopefully, when we put as many resources into it, but let's get there first.
Yeah, and I'd say to be determined, right? You know, the structure might change, but it'll always be important, but it might not be one of the top priorities.
All right, next slide.
Next. Yep.
Great.
So with this, back in the spring, we applied to a grant from the state. So the state was provided their own kind of pot of ESSER 3 funds. And so they decided to focus that on literacy and math through the form of supporting the purchase of what they call high quality instructional materials. And so we applied for that and were awarded $75K to buy materials. And so what I've been doing with our instructional coaches is identifying from teachers what their needs were. And then we went and purchased materials. And just in the last few weeks, we've been able to distribute those materials out to teachers. We're still finishing up with purchasing a few things that kind of slipped through the cracks and, making sure we spent all of that money to, again, support the broader work around improving our literacy instruction, particularly at the K4 level. Another thing, and so lots of resources have been purchased over the last few years using those ESSER funds. And I think that's it's been a great use of those funds to support this work as we've kind of shift how we approach literacy instruction with a higher focus on phonics. This year, our team of coaches is going to lead K-8 for now, but because again, elementary grades is really where our focus at. So it's not to say that we're ignoring the high school. That can be an area of focus at another time, but really looking at our earlier grades literacy program and doing an audit and seeing, all right, instructionally, what are the things that we need to change? Curriculum wise, what are the things that we need to change? And so really diving in to see how we can, again, further improve what we are doing. So that audit is one of the big things. We are working to align with what was called S204, now called Act 139 of 2024, which is a literacy bill. And so we're still waiting for some further guidance from the state. I believe Wednesday they're going to be coming out with some updated information, but we're trying to get ahead of that. So we already have a screener, and we're making sure that we're doing that multiple times a year, which is one of the pieces of Act 139. And so we're just trying to be kind of ahead of the curve so that we're being proactive and not reactive to state level policy. And then another kind of big thing that we're focusing on is our science and social studies instructional coaches are working closely with teachers and our literacy coaches to help embed social studies and science into kind of our literacy instruction, because given the short amount of time in the day, particularly at the K4 level, we want to make sure that those two pieces do not get kind of pushed to the back burner. And so a major focus of social studies and science is on developing background knowledge and vocabulary. And so some of the resources that we purchase for literacy actually connect with social studies and science to make sure that students have access to books on those content areas.
And to do it effectively, we cannot do it without the instructional coaches. It would be a waste of resources.
All right, next slide. As John indicated, our work around MTSS is really refining what we're doing and getting better clarity on certain nuanced aspects of kind of our broader system. So for instance, when we think about tier 3 interventions, just trying to be a little bit better with, all right, so what exactly are our entrance criteria and our exit criteria going to be? And we have those right now, but trying to gain higher level of consistency. And one of the ways that we've been doing that is during our early release days, is we bring all of the K-8 interventionists together and we work with them to kind of get to, what are the strategies you're using this school versus this school, so that we can have higher level commonality across all of our schools. We've also, with some funds that were awarded to us, we're able to hire a pre-K EMTSS coach to help focus on this work at the pre-K level as well. So that's another area, is just continuing to kind of bring pre-K into the fold, even though there are some significant differences in how our pre-Ks are run and the certain rules that they need to abide by. The more we can do to align that work with our K-4 programming is going to help. And so MTSS, again, it's not, we've been working on this for a couple of years, but when you're trying to implement any new routine, it takes several years for it to really kind of become institutionalized into an organization and become the way we do things. And that's why when we did the activity this summer with our administrators, the big takeaway, as John indicated, was, well, we really just need to keep kind of going with these particular priorities, because it's too soon to kind of shift gears, because we haven't really gotten to proficiency, if you will, on getting our system of MTSS up and running.
That was paid for by a grant, the coach, a pre-K coach.
And sorry, just to, I'm trying to keep us, we're way past time, but I'm trying, I just wanted clarification. The pre-K is not our pre-K partners, but our in-school pre-K programs.
Correct.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank
All
you.
right, next slide. I'll kind of keep hustling through here. Not a whole lot to talk about PLCs. We're just trying to get better at it. Trying to make sure that we're getting all of our educators in there, not just the core content teachers. And so a lot of that is just logistics, identifying facilitators, those sorts of things. And then just improving how we utilize that time with an emphasis on looking at learning target data, which again connects back to MTSS. So making sure that we have multiple levels where we're looking at student data, both individual data and class data, and seeing, all right, where are our students at and what do we need to do to make sure that we are knowing where our students are at and responding appropriately. So again, maintaining and refining our efforts around PLCs. Go on the next one.
I have a quick question about PLCs.
Sure.
I just, from the school-wide perspective, is the schedule working? Because it's my understanding that a lot of the time spent on that second Wednesday of the month early release is for PLC work. Is that right?
Sort of. So it depends on the content area. Some groups do use the early release day for PLC time. I would say a lot of the groups, it's usually facilitated by one of our instructional coaches. And usually that time is spent on supporting teachers with, some new learning, some new new strategies. So for instance, with K2 educators, a lot of the focus has been on using this resource called Shifting the Balance, which helps to embed more phonics instruction into, their broader instructional program. And so I'd say overall, it tends to be grade level, content area based professional learning. However, some other groups, depending on how you define PLC, are engaging in that too. But the PLCs, there's dedicated time in the school day for teachers to engage with it. It varies by school, grade level, etc. But they have at minimum 1 hour per week to engage in PLCs within the contract day outside of the early release days.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Again, kind of building off of what John said, this is ongoing work. This work never ends. We're constantly working to improve, to refine, and to align. I met with our middle school coaches today, and they are in the process of working with the high school to pull together teams of 9th grade teachers to meet with 8th grade and 7th grade teachers for math, science, ELA, and social studies for the time being, to just, again, better understand what's happening at both levels so that we can have a tighter alignment, between what's happening, so that when our students, matriculate from our middle schools to the high school, that the high school teachers have a good sense of what those students will be coming in with, and that there'll be some level of consistency with those. Another area of focus this year is utilizing what are called learning targets, which are kind of a smaller piece of like bigger benchmark understandings is the term that we use. And why that's helpful and important is when you have a smaller grain size to work with, it gives you better data. So let me give you an example. When I was a high school science teacher at Mount Abe, we developed learning targets for my 9th grade earth science class. And instead of saying, you know, all right, students are really good at geology, I would break it down and say, well, you know, maybe the student understands the rock cycle, but they're really not understanding, you know, Earth's internal processes. And so it really allows you, as kind of the name implies, to target student needs. So that you're not saying, well, the students are struggling with reading. Well, what specifically are they struggling with? And that better data allows you to have a better response. And so that also connects back to our work around MTSS, is having access to better data so that we can better support students. And I think that's the last slide.
Slide, Kevin.
Yeah, so Andrew and John, thanks for the presentation. Of course, I like what I'm thinking about across all these priorities. I'd say if one of these priorities is still this, you know, this is an ongoing, there's not a lot there, maybe we can consider that priority, you know, met. If we don't have, like, I think aligning the curriculum, that one stands aside as not a lot of focus in that one. So as we're evaluating the priorities, let's make sure that these are still something that we have a lot of work to do. Right? And I think a couple of them I heard might be worth consolidating, because what we're doing is kind of this one and this one both together. So I would be open to revive, you know, iterating that or putting a checkbox maybe on solution to the team. But I think as we look at this year with extreme focus on the budget, we have to, you know, come up with what's good enough for these priorities, and are we investing our resources not just effectively but efficiently? And is there work that we should be doing to make sure that these investments are sustainable? And one of the things we're doing as a district is it seems like we're taking the lead on a lot of these things that the state has asked all of the districts to do. And we're figuring it out, you know, as we go. And I think about all the other districts who are figuring it out as they go as well. Thinking about, can we get, like, more efficient by working across districts? We're trying to get more leverage, more help from the state, not just in throwing money at us, but actually doing the training, helping us move along. Because every single district should be working on these things.
It's true.
All doing it seems separately, which does not seem efficient.
And maybe before we move on from this, I just had one additional thought, and that is, I would encourage multiple ways of measuring, are we progressing in a priority? I know that, you know, when we were talking about belonging, we were focused on the survey that was administered last year. Yet there's a whole variety of ways we can measure and look at, are our students experiencing a sense of belonging? So just that idea of multiple measures. You know, when thinking about the data that we got last year from the belonging survey, almost a third, just below a third, and just above a third of the students, K-12, are not feeling a sense of belonging. So, you know, digging in deeper, you know, we probably have a pretty good idea of who those students are, because they're not engaged, and, you know, talking more with students, etc. So just multiple ways of measuring progress on any of our priorities. But thank you, that was really helpful, and good job.
So we do. Thank you for sitting and listening and participating in this. Hopefully it's also helpful and, you know, educational. We spent a lot of time on it with our admin team too, which I shared with you, you know, a long time. So ongoing work that we're committed to.
Okay, I think we're ready to move on. I think that, I think about this all the time. I think that, so I'm going to say it in a weird way, but John is retiring and we will have a new superintendent who will help us develop new priorities, right? And we as a board have that institutional knowledge, and it's going to be up to us to kind of retain this and help it to not get lost. And so just wanted to kind of bridge that as well.
We're supposed to remember all this?
All of it, Dale.
I realize
All down.
we're in trouble.
Which is
You
why-
have the link,
why
just
it's
study
in
it, you know, once
Read
you,
it on your
every couple of months, go back.
New survey.
I'll share my notes with you again.
All right, so our next agenda item
Is the continuous improvement.
is the continuous improvement plan. So who is going to take us through that one? So, and just do a high level why we have a continuous improvement plan, because it sounds like we're not meeting our goals.
So I'll start just by saying every school that gets any sort of federal or state funds needs to have a continuous improvement plan. Every school in the state of Vermont has one. So, and the framework looks like this. Because this is the prescribed framework that we need to use. Just to give you a little bit of background, and then turn over to Andrew. This has been reviewed by the AOE, meets their criteria. And part of the next step is that needs to happen is for the board to approve it. So every board in Vermont needs to go through this process. And there's two required components for us, which, just to let you know, match all of the information that we gathered 3 or 4 years ago. And it's integrated into this plan. So things that people, our school community thought were important for us to focus on, that's in this plan. I won't read through it to you because you can see what it is, but is there anything else you want to add, Andrew?
No, I just build off of what you said is, yeah, all school districts do this. There's kind of a template that you follow. And as you said, there's 2 required goals, one focused on safe and healthy schools, one focused on academic achievement. And as you just articulated, what we've done is this is all based on, again, our district priorities that came out of a variety of surveys and other kind of discussions during, kind of the COVID times. And so we've kind of carried on these different goals for the last few years, because as I indicated before, most, goals in education take several years to see any sort of significant impact. And so the 2 goals that we've had have to do with, again, student belonging, well-being for the safe and healthy schools, and then our literacy goal for academic achievement. And what you'll notice in here is we have tied in, the funding that supports this work. And so, for instance, the big one with academic achievement are our interventionists, which are supported with Title 1A funds, in addition to literacy coaches from Title II funds. And so that's kind of the piece. This is a federal requirement that the state then kind of crafts their own version of it in Vermont, and then we submit this. It's been submitted to the AOE, they've approved it, and then a secondary step is school board approval. And then I would say, in upcoming years, as we start to rethink our district priorities, that would also be a good time for us to rethink our continuous improvement plan goals as well.
So before we have a discussion, can I get a motion?
I'd like to move that the district's continuous improvement plan for this year.
Thank you. In a second. Thank you. I have 3 seconds. So Pat, you choose. Any discussion on the continuous improvement plan? Yes.
I have an issue with the historically marginalized groups phrasing. I mean, what happened in history is sort of forever. We don't have a time machine to go back. And it doesn't necessarily mean the people we're trying to target are from a certain group would be marginalized today. And to me, it just seems like it should more be an emphasis on getting resources to the individuals that need it, not based off of some, historical marginalization. I mean, because someone who's from a group that's historically marginalized may be very privileged today. So I don't know, just that phrasing in that word, just I have trouble with personally.
Andrew, I'm assuming you put your hand up to answer that question.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's wording we have to use from the state. So there's, we were identified for a couple of, I think it's on the next page. Could someone scroll down on this document? There we go. Equity supports. And so there's these different equity supports. And as you can see there, the two areas are IEP and historically marginalized state language. And so that has to be embedded in there.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions? Are we ready to vote? Okay. All in favor, give me a thumb, a hand, an eye, something. Thank you. Any opposed? Opposed to approving the plan? Okay, one. Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. The continuous improvement plan has been approved, and we are moving on to the next topic, which is the superintendent search update. So the HR committee has updated the timeline. If we can pop that up on the screen, that would be great. It's some modifications to it. So I just want to start there. And then it doesn't have to be approved by the board. So this is just the HR committee has updated the timeline. So we have some more dates around when things are going to happen. We are now in the online survey window, which actually the survey went out today. It was emailed to everybody who is associated with our schools. And now we need volunteers from all of our towns to put it in your front porch forum to get it to folks who do not have students in our schools, who are not affiliated with our school. So I'm going to put the one together for Jericho, and then I will send it to folks in the other towns. If you let me know who you are, who is going to volunteer to do that. Along with the survey link, we have times where the board is going to be in different locations to talk to community members. And the next one is tomorrow at Deborah Rawson at 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. So an opportunity for community members to talk to board members directly about criteria, goals, direction of the district with the next superintendent. We also have Saturday the 5th of October at MMU from 12 to 1.
I think it's important to say that all of you this will be changing. You have all signed up for certain dates and times, and there have been some changes. And so you'll hear from me.
Check your list
about that.
Yeah. So yeah,
locations.
We've had some location issues. We've had some date issues because of those location issues. So we are pretty darn close to having
I'm just
firm
saying what you're
times.
going to hear from Edie may be different than what you knew before this moment.
Yep. So apologies for all of that, and things continue to pop up as we're trying to do this in a very tight timeline. So, so we're on the survey now. We will have 2 meetings. Our October 14th meeting will spend about an hour with our consultants, maybe a little bit more with what they're putting together from all of the data that they're getting. The 28th will finalize it. So we'll send them back on the 14th to say, yes, this, no, that. They'll finalize it. We'll be clear on the 28th. We'll have a recruitment window from the middle of November until the end of the year. And you can read through the rest of it. But these dates, I think, are now firm. Yes. You're here. I'm looking. Yeah. Great. So just wanted to make sure we're updating. Oh, and our website. We have a website right on, there's a landing page on the MMU website for anybody to kind of keep up to date and see what's going on with this. So yes, Tara.
Thanks, Edie. I think it's important to note that on October 28th, when HCE presents us with the final criterion, it's a voting item. So everybody, it's something we're going to have to vote on the 28th when HCE comes to us.
Thank you.
So that's one decision point for tonight. And the next decision for the board would be.
It's going to be on February 10th. At our board meeting, we'll have an executive session, and we will, the HR committee will present the finalist, preferred candidates for the to be the finalist at that. Sorry, no, we have finalist interviews where we do before that. So we have finalist interviews where we get together, and we've all booked the time. And if you haven't, book it now for February 4th, 5th, and 6th to do interviews. And then on February 10th, we'll have an executive session to identify who the preferred candidates are. Then we will have our consultants do all of the, well, no, we board members will be doing some reference checking, and they will be doing some background checking for us. So you will need time. Like February, we will be spending a significant portion of our time as board members doing a lot of these pieces. So block out your time. I think everybody on the board has already met with the consultants one-on-one except for one board member, and I think that's going to happen this week. So I think we're in really good shape with that. There's something else that I'm missing before I answer a question.
I was just trying to, you lost me though on the actions that individual board members have to do.
Oh.
The key decision points for the board.
Key decision points for the board. Yep. So we have on the 14th, we're giving our consultants feedback. On the 28th, we're approving the process, approving the criteria. And then we have for the full board, the 4th, 5th, and 6th, we have set times for the interviews where we are all getting together face-to-face in person, not remotely, to do those interviews. The meeting on the 10th, we will have an executive session to choose a finalist or organize the finalists, how we're going to do that. And then between the 10th and when we choose, that's when, as board members, we will be checking references. If we need to do some of that also, our consultants will be doing background checks for us. Yes.
I was trying for a point of clarification on the February 4th, 5th, and 6th. You talked about time.
We did.
So like 6 to 8. I feel like it was just a couple hours.
I will confirm. Yes. It is. Yes. 5:30 to 9. Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. That's
Here?
nope. We'll let you know before we
Okay.
get there. Just block the time.
Sure.
So block the bad weather.
Yeah, I know. It's gonna be great.
Beautiful.
Bring a sleeping bag. It'll be fantastic.
No.
All right. That is the update
Wait.
on the search. Yes.
I'm sorry. I remember the conversation for the 4th, 5th, and 6th that it was going to be virtual.
Why don't we, since I can't answer that directly right now,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's not. I'm pretty sure it's here in person, but we'll, I will confirm all of that before we get to February 4th.
Okay.
We have time.
Yeah, because we had a lot of discussion about this last time where we were all holding the time on our calendars. And I thought we had confirmed we could all do it virtually if we needed to.
I think it was a virtual option, but ideally in person.
I thought that was it also, but we'll confirm that before we get there.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
In person.
Right. Way we do everything these days. Okay. Next item. Don't go far, Tara. Next item is we have to appoint a VSBA voting delegate for the annual meeting. We are all invited to the annual meeting, which is October 17th in the evening. Different from when it normally is. It will be virtual, and it has been really successful to have that meeting virtually. We need a voting delegate to vote on our board's position on the resolutions. And I believe there are only 5 resolutions this year. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's right. Let's take-
And Tara, do you know them well enough to take us through them, or do you want me to do that? Or we could have this, I don't want to push this to the next meeting because our next meeting is going to be really full.
Sure. And the last discussion I was in was mid-July about these.
Okay.
So my recollection, these have been updated since I've seen them last. A majority, yeah, you can see only 2 school districts in the state actually submitted resolutions.
Yep.
All the others were submitted on behalf of school districts, just suggesting a topic. And these are the 5 that the resolutions committee determined would be worth moving forward. There were a small handful of others where the committee was not interested in moving them forward.
And the way this works is this is how we direct the Vermont School Boards Association on what kind of work they should do to promote the work of our district. So we are voting as we look at these to say, yep, we want you to do that. We think that's beneficial to our district, or no, we don't think that's beneficial to our district. I think that so what we talk about here is a general thought, and then in that meeting, only one of us gets to vote, and different information could come to light, or the resolution could get changed on the fly. It doesn't happen often. Occasionally it does. So that's why we have one person who is allowed to vote for our district. Yeah, okay. Can I take us through, do you want to do the person first, or do you want to do the resolutions first? Folks, no thoughts. All right, I'm going to go through the resolutions first, and then we can do a person, because so the first one is residential and non-residential property tax rates, and asking the School Board Association to call upon the General Assembly to examine the impact and feasibility of raising the non-residential tax rate to the same rate as the homestead tax rate in every town where the non-residential tax rate is lower than the homestead tax rate. So in most towns in the state, the non-residential tax rate is lower than the homestead tax rate. In some towns, it is in some, yeah, is that right? Most? No, I guess in most it's higher, and in some towns it's lower. And so the towns that have a non-residential tax rate that is lower means the second homeowners pay lower taxes than the primary homeowners for homestead. And folks feel, and the non-homestead tax rate is set statewide, one rate, and the homestead tax rate varies by town. There we go, got that one. So they're asking for a law to get passed to say that if your non-residential tax rate can never be lower than the homestead tax rate. Thoughts?
That makes sense.
Well, it does, but the other side of it is the non-residential tax rate is what determines where businesses decide to locate, because they have the ability to go in one district versus being one thing, not based on it. So I think the idea of having a non-residential tax rate consistent allows landlords and other businesses to not that as a fact, but I don't know if the VSBA should be focusing their time on trying to figure out how to tweak the tax rates in the state. That seems.
Yep,
pretty far
rereading.
away from
Yeah,
where we
rereading.
want
So
the VSBA to focus.
asking the General Assembly to examine the impact and feasibility of raising the non-residential tax rate to the same rate in the towns
In
where
every
it's,
town.
in the towns where it's lower.
Yeah, in every town where it's lower, so. I mean, again, but I mean, personally, I don't think the VSBA should be delving into this particular part. It's not its place.
Okay,
And
other-
I don't think it's great.
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, just, I mean, it sounds like it's a lever they're trying to pull to reduce the tax burden on people who live here. But it just sounds, that's what that is. I don't think there's harm in, so are we voting, is the vote to go explore what that impact would be if that was raised? Like, I'm assuming homestead taxes here, out-of-state taxes here, and they just want to raise it to parity, not increase it, but bring everything up to level. So they're just trying to understand what benefit could be gained by a play. I don't think there's harm in, if that's what we're voting on.
We're voting to allow the VSBA to lobby to look into this, right? To lobby for this policy.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, but I think we kind of wanted to understand what that looks like as a lever that could potentially be pulled, because I just don't think it's going to get any easier to pass school budgets moving forward. So if there's no levers that were explored, but I just want to be clear that that's they're just trying to understand that first.
I'd like a little clarification too. So it'd be like if I were to buy a house in a neighboring town and rented it out, and then we were talking about that second house, that would be considered my second home, even though it's rented out full time to somebody who's living in the house. And also my dad, who lives in Texas, who bought a house down the street from me. So he did that. That's his second home as well. But he doesn't live there but 3 months out of the year.
That's the issue. It's all the same.
It's all the same. So we would be in turn potentially raising rent on people as well.
As well as vacation.
Would vacation homes fine.
Vacation home,
But-
business.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Yeah, partially lived in-house, yeah, because right now we only have 2 tax rates in Vermont, which is the real issue. The real issue is that we need to separate out,
Yeah.
but that's not what this is, right? This
That
is,
doesn't, yeah. So that.
this is,
yeah,
there are
we-
towns in crisis right now because their primary homes are being sold as secondary homes because people are getting tax breaks for doing that. And so they're losing their population for their school. And so they're trying to figure out how do they make sure that the tax rate isn't the thing that is the tipping point. So they're saying, please help us. So I don't have a problem with asking the VSBA to look at, to say, please make sure that this is at least being addressed statewide and understanding which towns have this and why. And like, that's my take on this. From
It just calls on the General Assembly to examine the impact of non-residential tax rates and homestead tax rates in every town, where the non-residential tax rates are lower than the homestead tax rate. That's what they should be doing anyways.
It was just one of those levers. Like, it's
Exactly.
just-
Why do we need to prioritize?
other discussion on that? Yeah,
I'm with Kevin on this. I think this is out of scope for us. We're the MMU school board district. We're not, statewide issues are not our purview as far as I'm concerned. I appreciate the sentiment here, and I think there is a real need to look at tax policy statewide, but it feels just like a little bit out of our lane.
My concern is that it's not just limited to residential properties. And I don't really want, I mean, again, I think it's out of our purview, but I'm not educated enough to know what kind of impact this would have on businesses as well. I guess that's just something that could be looked at by the General Assembly, but to me, if it's limited to just residential properties, I'd be more in favor of it. But I also think it's kind of out of scope and a little overly broad.
Lisa?
I disagree. I think since there's so much that we get from the state that we can't control within our budget, I don't think there's anything wrong with lobbying the legislature to look at this. We're not promoting a certain tax policy. We're just asking for it to be looked at to see what levers are there and to help, towns like Stowe who have crumbling school buildings because they don't have any levers to use to make sure that everybody's paying a fair rate. So.
But like, why this piece of it? What, like, tax policy is so complex. I mean, I agree that we need an overall revamp of a lot of these things, but why is this particular piece interesting to us when there are so many facets of this issue that are complicated and multifaceted?
I guess I feel this is pretty low hanging fruit.
Another thing just considers, also look at the district whose name is on this recommendation, and they're the far extreme of increased tax burden because they have a perfect purpose to it, and they're on the border, across Hanover. Received apparently a lot of homes get converted. We sort of begging for help on this, and we're fortunate to not be as bad as the rest of the district. Good. So the empathy is there, and I think it's something to look at. I just don't think it's.
Well, I think it's also, don't we have to consider, I mean, if there was some people from the community, quite often what they do ask the board is, what are you doing about lowering my tax rates, right? And it would be kind of handy to say, well, we've asked, our state board to petition the assembly, which you should probably be doing also, right? And so it's one thing that we can do is to ask, our state board to petition the legislature to really try to solve this issue. That way, I would feel better being able to say we tried, right? It's something we could do.
All right, I'm not gonna get an answer, and I'm okay with that. I just want I want us to have a discussion about what we're being asked to do.
Traditionally at the meeting, motions are made to modify the resolution based on people's feedback. So, whoever is going to take the will of the board needs to take that in live fashion as the resolution gets adjusted. So we historically have not done a vote on each of these, just more have a short discussion, and then whoever the person is who's got the lucky straw to kind of take that to the VSBA.
Yes, Tara.
I just want to point out, right, this is the first time, at least in my time on the board, where this annual meeting is going to be done virtually. So when we were at the table last year, we had our voting rep and we could quickly confer amongst the small group of us and say, this is how you should vote. We're not going to have that opportunity at the annual meeting. So I think, right, that's why Edie's having this conversation, just because our voting delegate needs to go in with how our board feels. Mind you, there's going to be a number of other boards voting too on these resolutions. And it's one vote per board that attends the annual meeting.
I think it was virtual during COVID. So I think we had 2 years where it was virtual and it was well attended. And what?
I had to wing it one year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could totally have a text booth and that would be reasonable.
I thought did we already appoint someone to the VSBA?
Oh, this is different from that. This is somebody to represent just our board voting on the resolutions.
Yes, okay.
Yep. All right, data collection and reporting. And this is the one that the VSBA's resolution committee has no position on. And the resolution is the passage of the federal Every Student Succeeds Act, as well as state and local needs, make necessary for accurate and informative data more important than ever. Why is that? Okay. General Assembly should continue to fund the integration and close linkage of state and local information systems to maximize the efficiency and productivity of data collection, analysis, and reporting at both levels. There we go. And then there's 1 through 5 on the data collection. So I'm feeling like the committee on this one, but just because the data, so we had a problem with the e-finance program that the state pushed out to boards. How long ago, John? 4 or 5 years ago. And we, as we are early adopters, as we've talked about in this setting numerous times, got this program that was pushed that there were 3 years that folks had to get it. We got it, our finance converted into the system. The system did not do all of the things that it was promised to do. We had issues with making sure data was year to year accurate in numerous ways. Actually, our whole business office turned over after the stress and strain of that. Is that not accurate? If not,
Almost everybody.
Almost everybody turned over and we are not the only district in the state that had this issue. So I am incredibly gun shy on the data pieces here, and we need better data. So I don't have a good answer on this one, but I'm having a reaction to it. So any thoughts from anybody? Which I think is probably why the resolution committee didn't take a position. Yeah.
I mean, there's no like, what's the VSBA going to do? It's just telling the agency what to do. You know? But I'm assuming from the context of the format of the other ones, we're saying that the VSBA should advocate for the agency to do this. And I mean, in general, more supportive of this than the other one, and having a consistent way of reporting data across school districts. To the point earlier tonight around how every school district is trying to measure success on these important priorities differently, using different survey tools to gather the data. It's very inefficient. But I get it. As you know, the other point is be careful what you ask for. If the AOE decides to pick this one up, we're left with, you know, a crazy system.
Yeah. Right, because the finance data is collected by the SU level, and the student achievement data is collected at the school level, and so those two systems currently don't talk to each other. So everything has to be handcrafted at the agency. I just learned this on Friday. Everything has to be handcrafted when you're trying to get that data, which is why so much data doesn't make sense, because they don't have all of the data collected in the same way. So yes, necessary.
And so this just seems like another one of those cases where we're pushing back against the AOE, right? Like the agency should report regularly to policymakers, educators, and the public on what input was and how it was used. So once again, like we were talking about with the district quality standards, and a lot of the feedback in that meeting was, you're going to ask us for all of this, and it's just going to go into the clouds, right?
So more transparency on what you're collecting, more transparency on how you're using what you're collecting, more transparency on the data that you're receiving, like all of that.
I just want to be careful that these resolutions aren't just part of this narrative of the school boards pushing back against the state and saying, you know, holding up a mirror to the problems that exist, and that they're actually things that can make a difference for our communities and our students. That's all my concern is with those two resolutions thus far. They just sound like kind of the story that we've been exasperated over the past budget season in particular.
That's a good point. Other thoughts? All right, I'm moving on to number 3, artificial intelligence. The VSBA advocates for legislation that would require the Agency of Education, in consultation with the Agency of Digital Services, Division of Artificial Intelligence, to take all needed actions necessary for the responsible use of artificial intelligence in Vermont schools. This may include model policies, guidelines for use, and a code of ethics. No thought.
I wonder then, along the same lines, if we get some sort of standardized model or policy, then that sort of interrupts what Mike Weston might want to do, you know, at the high school level versus maybe at the middle school levels, and how we want to do that. Are we, you know, it's asking a lot.
Local control versus a plan that everybody in the state follows.
Probably some AI came up with any.
AI probably wrote this resolution.
We're gonna do a podcast.
Personally, I have thoughts, but I'm trying to see if anybody else has thoughts. Yeah, go ahead, Al.
I would even wonder, I mean, I think statewide resources are probably useful here, but I almost wonder if we need something more than just Vermont's Agency of Digital Services. Like, having worked in state government, I know that's not a very resourced organization itself. So I do agree that, I'm not sure who just said that, like, it shouldn't be on John to write a policy for our whole district because it's so complicated. And there's value in adopting best practices from other organizations. So whether that's state or whether that's even regional or even national, that's what's on my mind. I think sometimes when Vermont tries to go it alone, even at the state level, we just don't have the resources to be on the cutting edge of some of this stuff.
Yeah, our division of artificial intelligence. Go ahead, Tara. I'll come back to me.
Sorry, I had trouble with this one when the VSBA Resolutions Committee met, because I just don't believe it's something that needs to be legislated. I get how the technology is used and how it's being discussed in educational spaces. And back to that local control comment you just made, it's like we should be teaching students, regardless of age, how to use it responsibly. But I don't think it's information that needs to be legislated. I do agree that there should be some kind of model policy that could be shared, but I don't believe that this is work that the VSBA needs to take on lobbying for in the legislature.
Yeah.
Do we legislate the internet?
There is legislation around how the internet can be used and the data that can be collected, and it's super old. Phone-free schools, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's one where I'm like, that's way out of our lane. I think that there's, I don't know, guidance would be helpful, but I think it doesn't have to be,
Okay.
By the time we get something in stone, it'll have evolved threefold by then. And so whatever we do now won't be relevant to whatever the latest version of ChatGPT is. We can write something today and next month they got the next update, and it doesn't matter. We just got to be willing to go with the flow on it.
Which way are you going to vote? No?
I don't know.
I work in this space a lot on the day job. He does quite well as AI driven. Some talk about it a lot. So in the context of education, it certainly is going to be a game changer for the next bit of technology. I think we have to adapt our existing policies to keep up with technology, but not necessarily look at it as a completely different thing from what we have today. 30 years ago, we didn't have search, Google search. And once the internet came about, we had to kind of figure out how are we going to train and educate our kids in the world of having access to all this information. Now we have to figure out how we're going to educate our kids when Gen AI is gonna make it so much easier to do all this stuff. Now we have to, like, what do they need now to be successful in the next technology innovation? I don't think this focuses on that. And that's where I think we need to be thinking is far ahead. How do we change a whole system?
Well, yeah, and I look at this the way I look at it simply, right? For me, it's everybody has a very smart calculator, but we still teach math, right? So how do we make sure that we're still teaching math in the digital world, still teaching how to use how to know what the stuff is that you're getting, right? And so does that need to be legislated? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that if we're only making that decision locally, then we're not making sure that everybody statewide is getting, so which hat am I wearing? This is the
controlling the data is super critical, more critical to the future than we have today, because AI surfaces that data very easily. And so where you think you might have something next week, may not really show up sometimes. Now AI is more developed. It's giving that information, but so that's another area that needs to type that up. Making sure that it's all private, data is.
Yeah, and so this is should there be a code of ethics on what's acceptable for use in schools, right? And do we want the agency of education to work with the agency of digital services to come up with what that is? I'm not getting anybody excited about this at all on the board here.
I mean, I feel that, like we said, Mike Weston might be doing it differently than some other principal and some other principal. And I'm like, maybe, so I think code of ethics might be look different for Mike Weston than some other, like, school and CBU. Whereas I feel like it might just be district-wide, something that we need to think about, but I don't, I think lobbying the legislature to do it, I just think it's not the best resources, personally.
Are you feeling like we need statewide AI?
Yeah, I think some guidance, some model policies would be helpful, but I don't think you need to legislate that.
Okay. All right, I'm moving on to the next one because I'm getting a lot of consensus on this and I'm trying to keep us not 2 hours late tonight. So the next one is the VSBA supports legislation that would require school districts to adopt a policy concerning use of cell phones and other personal electronic devices in schools. Policy shall address at minimum the specific circumstances or time periods during which cell phone or personal electronic device use is permitted, when their use is prohibited, and any relevant exceptions, for instance, such as disability accommodation, medical need, or other emergencies. I'm going to let Jimmy go first.
I don't think phones should be in school at all. They're a complete distraction. I am the youngest one in here, and I was in high school when Snapchat was around, and it was nothing but a distraction. And that was 14 years ago. So it has done nothing but escalate. I know firsthand from our nanny that things get spread out very fast. And there's no code of ethics on what kids do on social media. It's just free will, and they have no filter. And they say really mean things on there, and it distracts the classroom. Kids cry in the halls every day because somebody said something on something. And if we didn't have, all these distractions, it takes the teacher 5-10 minutes to get the class back into focus. And if you're sitting there looking at your phone for 2 minutes, you lost 2 minutes of instruction. Try to catch up on those 2 minutes to figure out where you're at and what you're doing. And there's no place for extra distractions in this world with cell phones, because we have tablets and computers in the school for their technological learnings. And calling mom is is there's an office phone. We can call them from the office if there's an emergency. It worked when we were kids. It'll work still.
Do you have something you want to say, Kevin?
I don't disagree or agree with that, but we all agreed with this resolution, which made policy. Just made this.
Yep, there's schools in there.
No reason for the state to regulate this. Still,
Which is great. You can.
Other thoughts?
I agree with both those pieces.
Okay. Anybody else? So, okay. All right, I'm moving on. So Secretary of Education. So this is part of the job description of the Secretary of Education, adding that the Secretary holds an advanced degree in education, public administration, or a related field, shall have held the position of teacher, professor, educational administrator, or equivalent position. The Secretary shall have expertise, including knowledge of public education policy and practice, and a familiarity with school governance structures. So changing the job description of the Secretary of Education in the Vermont laws.
So that's not in the job description already.
So
Underlined part?
adding the underlined part, it is currently not, yep. So the legislature tries to, so what is not underlined is the current law. And this would be, yeah, actually changing the law. The legislature tries to give the governor enough leeway to fill the positions appropriately and not prescriptively. And the question is this one not prescriptive enough or not?
I'm in agreement with this.
But are the implications of this that then they're going back to lobbying to remove the current?
Current is interim still.
And do they not have these qualifications?
The current interim does not have these qualifications.
I guess I would be curious, other secretary positions of the state, are their criteria as thorough as we are trying to change this to, or generally are they all kind of just?
Yeah, every state does education differently. A lot of states have what Vermont used to have, which is an agency over the secretary, so the secretary doesn't report directly to the governor.
Oh, sorry, but I was asking about other secretary positions in the state, not.
Oh, sorry. They all have different kinds of different criteria. So they do have different, they all have different criteria that are in there. Yeah.
I guess my question is, so we're going for something that's very specific and thorough and hits a lot of points. Do the other position secretaries?
Some do.
Some do, are as thorough as we're trying to get.
Hey, Heather, that was my question when this came up with the resolutions committee. Are there other statutes for secretary positions that are this prescript? And the answer I was given was the only other one that is defined as this update that the VSBA is proposing is the health secretary. So Dr. Levine. That one says you have to have a medical doctorate degree. That's the only other secretary, which I then took issue with wanting to change the law.
Yeah, so I just feel that we're gonna come out with Abby trying to, people don't like, what's her name? Zoe Saunders, like coming up with this, suddenly we're like just being really catty about it. Like, it does make sense, like all those things, of course I'd want that in like Secretary of Education, but on the heels of somebody that is unqualified, in my opinion, to then have come back at the legislative session like this, I don't know, it doesn't really sit right with me. Coming now, like maybe, yeah, but I do feel like this should be in the qualifications. I just don't want to see like
be a part of this again narrative.
Yeah.
But these resolutions are supposed to be contemporary and in response to our experiences late.
Go ahead, Allison. Thank you.
No, this is embarrassing. I mean, I think you guys know that let me back this up. This is not how we conduct ourselves by trying to pass a resolution that's so clearly targeted at one specific person. There's a lot of things in this process that are wrong, but this is embarrassing to me. When you look at the different members of the cabinet, you can appoint your golf buddy to be a secretary in the state of Vermont. Like, the qualification is the governor picks you. This is more competitive than any other position except the secretary or the head of the Department of Health, which of course requires all kinds of medical specialization. And if we want to look at this more closely, I'm all for it. But the timing of this is just mean-spirited, I think, and sends a really bad signal about our character as Vermonters. We're trying to recruit someone to be a superintendent of our school. What are we trying to say here? How specific is our job description for the superintendent of our school district? How specific is the job description of any position across the state? This is frankly just embarrassing to me. It feels very targeted.
Well, this has been a long discussion. Go ahead, Gail. For years.
Maybe mean-spirited towards her, but I don't read it that way at all. This is mean-spirited towards the governor. You pick someone that the huge majority of the administrative staff in the entire state thinks is not qualified to be what she's appointed to be, even though she's only interim. Apparently they lost the lawsuit, didn't get the lawsuit off.
So the lawsuit is, I think it's being heard next week.
So it is still.
Yeah.
So I think this is mean-spirited
Or
towards
the
the
week
governor.
after.
The governor.
I don't want to be mean-spirited towards anybody in the legislation that we're trying to propose. It's like, if you have to describe this as mean-spirited towards anyone, I think we need to take a pause.
Well, yeah, I guess my feeling is every position, from a classroom teacher, special educator, all the way up through, you have to be licensed, highly qualified. So why would this be different though? And I hear what you're saying, Katie, that, we're in the middle of this right now. And these resolutions are to help correct the course. I personally don't view it as being spirited. I think it's critical, honestly. We won't expect anything less from our superintendent. Licensure, in the expected, qualifications.
I will agree that the timing is not ideal and that this is what we need in our Secretary of Education, both. This has been an ongoing discussion where for the last 8 years, am I right, John? Where the governor has been saying it just needs to be somebody who has a business brain, can run the department, agency of education. They don't have to have education background at all, and has written numerous letters about that. And so to say that we should not have any governor ever have that as their criteria for whoever runs the agency of education, I don't have a problem with that personally. But I agree that the timing feels, it's too bad that we have to do this right now, right? Like, go ahead.
I just think the process works the way it is. Right, the governor appoints the legislators, not in 2 years. The governor should have the ability to appoint the secretaries as they see fit. I worked in the Department of Defense. The Secretary of Defense doesn't have anyone to get the job done. So I think you leave it up to the governor with their staff. Fix itself.
Okay, so we are not in agreement on any of these. I love that. So now we need somebody to actually be our voting member.
Now, which one of us? Because when you're in there, you can either be really outspoken, right? You can try to sway other school districts, or you can just be like, I'm not going to say anything during this debate. So,
Or you get swayed because
or you
there
get swayed.
are people who are really passionate about that agenda item, have the
Yeah, the district that wrote each proposal presents it to everybody. My experience last year. So they're there, they're presenting it to the whole, everybody that's there. So of course they're like super passionate about it. So you feel.
So Kevin has done it in the past. I have done it in the past. I will be at the meeting. Tara will be at the meeting for sure. I don't know who else will for sure be at the meeting. I'm happy to do it if y'all want me to. If you want somebody else to do it, I'm fine with that. But we do have to actually vote. So nominate and vote.
Well, I'll nominate you, Edie. I'll nominate you. It sounds like you're willing.
Okay.
I would ask that whoever we have, and I don't want to do it because some of these I'm pretty passionate about personally, and I'm sure that would bias me. I just want to make sure the person who's doing trying to represent the lowest board, which clearly is really difficult.
Basically, made no second, Edie, because Edie knows exactly what we want.
I do. Depending on who I'm looking at, I know exactly what we want.
Just body language cameras on all this.
Yep. Does anyone else want to nominate anybody else? Yeah. Do you have a strong desire to do this, Tara? I know you're going to be at the meeting.
Edie, I have a feeling you and I would vote differently on some of this stuff. So if the board consensus is you, then that's fine with me.
All in favor?
Wait, can we talk about the differences between how Tara and Edie would vote?
We don't want to know. We don't want to know.
I can wear my school board hat for this, and yeah, I will tell you that in general, I'm gonna support the VSBA folks who say this makes sense for us to do or this doesn't make sense for us to do. So because they see what their lobbying is, what they have been successful in lobbying for, and what falls within their what's the what do you say? It's, I want to say like platform of ideas, but it's not the right word. Purview. Thank you. So that's generally how I feel.
Anyone who attends the meeting can participate
In the discussion.
that our district has won.
Correct. Correct.
I think I want to nominate Tara. Sorry, Edie.
That's fine. I'm totally fine with that.
Tara.
You're withdrawing your nomination.
Yeah, sorry. I love you.
Totally fine with that. I'm good with that.
Withdrawn. Nominate Tara.
I'll second.
Go on record for the most awkward move of the school year.
You know, I hold grudges. It's like this horrible thing. Are we not following Robert's rules here? Is that what I'm hearing?
Robert's not even here.
It's done. We've got a dangling second out there.
We have a dangling second, yes. But I'm fine. It's all in favor of having Tara do the voting. I'm totally fine with it.
So are we voting now for?
For Tara. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Tara's our delegate and it's all good. Thank you, everybody.
I went to dig out my VSBA glossy Robert's Rules cheat sheet.
All right, when you figure out if we did that right, let us know, please. Next is the superintendent report. Anybody have questions for John? Anybody want to highlight anything that we have in the superintendent report?
I just had a question about the 56 new staff. Is that normal for a year to have that many new staff?
We had 55 last year.
Okay.
So I'd say, yep.
Now, is a lot of that turnover kind of like replacing people who were retiring, or is that like new positions?
Retirements, support staff, not new positions, not.
Okay.
No, we haven't been adding any positions for a while.
Yes, Tara.
Different question. John, I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about, well, now the pause with the PCB mitigation in Browns River and also the stormwater runoff, because I know that's a pretty hot topic right now in our communities.
Yeah, so the for Browns River, and I wrote it in there, that you get two options from the state if you're PCBs that are at a certain level. The health department said option one is the safest. That's the one that they recommend, and that's the one we went with. There's one room that the 5th and 6th graders at Browns River, the action levels were above the state levels, and so the plan was to identify the PCBs and eliminate and address the issue and retest. The money is not there to do that. And so we're with the guidance from the health department, we can take option 2, which gives us a year to be able to do that work. And that is what we're doing now. I don't know what's going to happen with the piece. I mean, something legislative has to happen with this, because it's definitely become an unfunded mandate. Not just that, just the resources. I mean, we want to keep everybody safe, but you have to have a plan of how you're going to pay for things and roll it out. And that was not done. You know, North Country is intense today. I'm sure that wasn't too fun. Their high school. So
It'll be colder tomorrow.
even colder. So that's where we're at with that. Some of this is going to need to be solved, Tara, in the legislature this year. Then the stormwater is a law that was passed a while ago and gave a time period for not just school districts, but everybody to put in stormwater mitigation systems if you're in a basin, and we're in the Champlain Basin. And so over the last couple of years, we've been working with the state and their consultant or their contractor around the sites that were identified in Mount Mansfield, and then putting together the plan, getting all the permitting, and then being able to do the work. And at this time, we got in pretty early comparatively, or very early. So there's supposed to be a 90-10 split. So, and we talked about this last year during the budgeting process, but the state and federal funds pay for 90%, school district pays for 10. And and so we had some shovel-ready projects, and the ones that I listed in the superintendent report were shovel-ready. And I quoted what they said, but essentially that the costs were higher than they thought, and they couldn't get enough people to bid on the projects to do the work. So we do have one project that's taking place right now, which is at Jericho. That again, I won't bore you, but we didn't even know these people were coming. It's a little bit disorganized, I would say, at the state level, or maybe very disorganized. Yep.
So we don't know how long the delay is going to be.
No, they're having a meeting in a month or so, and they're going to talk about next steps and what that might look like, and I'll inform you folks.
Are we the only district that got impacted like this, or are there other districts?
No, they sent it many.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, this was a very to all the school districts that were shovel ready.
I feel like I have to contact my local legislator.
Yeah.
Isn't that part of the problem with the engineering standards changing, right? For their whole engineering plans are being thrown out by these 100-year events happening year after year after year. So the same construction techniques can't be used.
Yeah, I could speak to that. These projects have nothing to do with a flood event. These are just water quality. So this is like the water quality standards, like 1 inch of rain over the impervious area alone. And this 3 acres only treating 50% of that. So it's equivalent of like a ½ an inch over the entire impervious on site. So it's going to has no impact on the larger floods. It's just a water quality, which tends to be your smaller rain events, because it's that first flush of rain is the dirtiest, because all the oils and dirts and stuff on the parking lots get washed off in that first inch. So like the recent floods don't really impact this, and it won't have an impact on future floods really either.
So we'll keep you informed when I know more.
Hey, John, is there different remediation techniques for the PCBs that we could consider besides removal? I'm not really sure the source, but I know we've covered them up in the past in projects where we're not doing, full renos, where I'm not sure the source, if they're the windows or what exactly is causing it, but.
I mean, to be honest, I don't want to like say something that I'm not educated on. I'm not a BCB expert, and I've been, really emailing the folks there when I have a question. I would email them, Steve.
But then,
Okay.
I guess it's even before that though, because what we wanted to have somebody help us figure out what the cause of the PCB issue is in those spaces. And we have been told there isn't even money for that. So we would have to pay for that ourselves. So now we're on the 1 year hold.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any mitigation strategies other than you identify where the PCBs are coming with it, and you deal with them and you retest.
Yep.
Yeah, but I mean, the dealing with them is identifying the source.
Yes.
Sources.
Yes.
So they haven't done that yet, is what you're saying.
And they've told us there is no more money to even do that. So they tested the air,
Okay.
found that there is a tiny amount of PCBs, less than the federal level, less than all, but Vermont, the state, has picked different numbers. And now has said, and when the House this year said we need to stop testing until we know that we have enough money to do something with it, the Senate said no. And so now we're in this predicament where we have done testing and we can't fix anything, and we're here.
It's an unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
One of many.
Okay. Anything else on the superintendent report? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from September 9th? Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Katie, for seconding. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Okay, thank you. Committee reports, you heard from HR. Community engagement, you have some things?
It's just more of the same about the scheduling of when we're going to meet to talk about the surveys with the public.
I need a person from every town except for Jericho and Bolton, because we only have one person from Bolton. Thank you, Steve, for posting. To volunteer to post, I will send you what you need to post. Thank you. Thank you.
Hopefully it's
I can do it for Richmond.
Okay. Gail, can you post for Huntington, please? Thank you. All right. All right, I will send you something tonight to post.
Okay, so the email we got isn't what you're sending. You'll send
Correct.
something in. Okay.
Yep, great, thank you. And I'll send it tomorrow. Yes, well, will we know tomorrow, Katie? I'm gonna send it tonight, and then we might have another one.
Yeah, we can talk about this after, if
Okay.
everybody's okay with that. There's just some dates for the Richmond times that are gonna have to change the location and the date.
So I'm gonna send you one tonight, and I'm gonna send you another one in the next day or so, so you'll post twice with dates, because we do have to get one out.
Yeah, we can post the 5th. It's the,
Yep, okay, great. Finance and facilities, anything, Lisa? You're muted.
We met last week and had a great wide-ranging discussion on various things and have finalized the development timeline. So next month, in addition to hearing from the HR consultants, you'll also be hearing a lot about budget priorities. So
Great. Thank you. Regional Advisory Board. Is there anyone interested in serving on the Regional Advisory Board as our district representative? This would be 3 meetings a year,
Approximately.
in addition to these regular meetings that you do, and they're usually at 3:30
Yes.
to 4:30, sometimes a little longer than that. Do you know what day of the week? Wednesday, Thursday?
These are usually Wednesdays or Thursdays.
are they in real life?
Nope, all virtual. At least they have been for the last few years. There might be some that are in person, specific ones, but we didn't last year. I go to all of them.
You'll do it? Great, thank you. Okay, Kevin is our regional, thank you, advisory board representative. Appreciate that. Any other VSBA, anything, Tara? Oh, yes, we do. We have, the VSBA, conference is coming up on the 25th of October, 24th and 25th, the evening of the 24th and the day of the 25th. And, if you want to go, it would be best if you sign up before the 30th of this month, because it costs the district a little bit less money if you do that. We can always add somebody later, but if you know you're going to go for sure, please do that so that we can get the best rate.
I will be there. Anyone else?
I will be there. Sandra, you be there? Great.
When it comes to new board members, is there any educational workshops or anything that are part of this that would be beneficial for us going, or?
So in the spring, the VSBA does board member 101, and you should have access to that. And then I can look at the agenda to see if there's anything specific. I don't recall off the top of my head.
Engagement focused.
Okay.
But
which is good for every board member, how to be engaged in your community and how to be able to represent your community's perspective.
I think in general, it's really beneficial. There's a lot of great networking that happens, a lot of understanding how other districts operate. So regardless of how long you've been on the board.
And there's ongoing workshops that the VSBA has almost monthly.
And you don't have to do the overnight this year. I mean, they do a training on Thursday afternoon for board chairs and superintendents that everybody's invited to, and then a supper on Thursday night. But the actual conference piece is all day Friday, so you could make a day trip out of it.
And it's about an hour and a half from here. A little closer for you, maybe. Yeah, not too bad. Longer for you, maybe.
I was just trying to think, as a board though, how are we doing the new member orientation and stuff?
So we have been running orientations roughly monthly. There are 2 more to go, I think. Yep. Yep.
Can I give a student mentor update?
Yes.
So today I had the privilege of meeting with 9 applicants for the student rep on the school board from MMU.
A record number, I think.
Yeah, MMU. And yeah, it was a record number. I think this is the third year that I've done that. And it was just, again, a privilege that I will have somebody who will be on the board. We'll have another rep join the community engagement committee. So there'll be 2 student reps, because I believe the farmer is going to continue that work. And overall, they're just really passionate about the bigger picture of the district. And there are some students who are really passionate about representing student voice and moving and shaking things up on the ground at the smaller high school level. And so everywhere, Mike is really committed to making sure all of these kids who showed interest in leadership roles will have a leadership role somewhere in the high school, and the different ways that they can facilitate that. But I know that a lot of kids struggle, and it's an interesting journey, but I felt like I left that meeting and thought the kids are all right. It was a good time.
So Abby's staying. She's going to be a senior this year, and she's representing, and then we will have a junior joining her. And will we also have a junior on the finance committee? Did we have anybody?
He wasn't sure that you wanted someone, and we can talk about that too.
Okay.
But right now, there's just the community engagement committee.
Okay, I thought we had talked about that.
Yeah, and I think that there's capacity to, if there's a project or something that they can move around.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So next meeting, we'll have a student rep to introduce.
Maybe this next or the second meeting after this. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Great. Any other business? That's everything on the list. Yes.
Just quick, it's one incidental letter on this call, California became the latest state to restrict student smartphones.
So there is a place for state law in this? Is that what I just heard?
I don't think Vermont would be the first one to
California, they did it. Vermont could be. Okay, just curious.
All right, it's hard to hear Kevin. I think he's a little bit far from the mic.
He's actually right next to it, but talk louder.
Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. But that was just incidental. The primary other business that I wanted to ask the chair to consider for a future meeting, it's not too late, is for the board to make a decision about membership in the VSBA.
Whether we should be members of the VSBA?
Because it's a cost, and I'd like for that to come to the board. Right now, it's automatic.
Yep.
A year, more years.
Yep.
Ever discussed.
Okay. Okay.
I think it's the biggest expense that the school board has to reckon for. So if we're not doing the superintendent's. But I think it's pretty good. Like $20,000-$30,000.
Okay. I don't know what it costs.
And that's why I want.
Okay. We can put that on, not the next meeting, but
Over what?
maybe the 28th.
Okay. I got it written
Because
down.
the next meeting is packed.
I got it written down.
Thank you. Other business. Anybody else have other business? I think we covered all of my other business in the regular meeting. So just the reminder that tomorrow from 6:30 to 7:30 at the Deborah Rawson Library, there will be an opportunity for community members to meet with board members and share their thoughts on our superintendent search and the district direction, right? All of that. So that's tomorrow. That's the next opportunity, the first opportunity for that. Survey went out today. We will be sending that out also to people who are not in the who do not have students in the district. We're going to post that as part of the Front Porch Forum post that we were just talking about a few minutes ago.
Will it be on our website for people to access it?
If
now?
it's not yet, it should be.
Because that way we can have Mary include it. I don't even know if the flyer is worth the time,
Probably not.
but, you know, just getting that out on our website would be good.
Yep. You can bring that.
And the meeting tomorrow at Rawson is in the conference room.
Great. Great. Just making sure nobody else has anything else. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second. Thank you, Stu. All in favor, I will vote by leaving, going home. See you on the 14th. We're meeting at Smiley on the 14th, and there is an optional tour in advance of the meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.